Shalom, family. How's everyone doing? I am your brother Dawid. Thank you for taking a moment to check out this video on the Go Lightly perspective. I'm here with my wife, Hokma,
Shalom, everyone.
and we're going to jump right back into a series that we began on relationship failure. Last week, we talked about relationship failure and the things that lead to relationship failure. So we're going to go back over a few of those things just by way of review, and then we're going to advance the narrative to discussing personal failure because each of us have had those experiences where we failed personally. But before we do that, this episode of the Go Lightly Perspective is brought to us by House of Dawid. House of Dawid is an exclusive jewelry company that has sponsored us, that we've been working with, and we're honored to have that partnership. All of the things that you see, the bracelets, the necklaces, all of these things will be a part of the new collection for House of Dawid. So please, if you have a chance, go over there and check them out. HOUSEOFDAWID.com. All right, y'all. Now that we got the business out of the way, I'm going to turn it right over to you, sweetie. You can go ahead and just give them a quick recap.
Okay. Shalom, everyone. So last week, as my husband mentioned, the last video, it may not have been last week, but it was the last video.
Yeah.
We reviewed facing failure in relationships, and the top 3 reasons for failure in relationship being infidelity, finances, and poor communication, with communication issues being the leading cause of failure in relationships. So we thought it was just natural to segue into a discussion about personal accountability and personal failures that each of us have to address on our own in order to be proactive and prevent our part in the failure.
Correct. So a lot of those communication errors is the reason for everything else. So we're going to talk about the personal element because the personal element, assuming responsibility and being accountable for our own mess, for our own stuff, ultimately can make a relationship toxic.
Right.
Because this is in essence what we're trying to do, because we advocate for families and for patriarchy, for matriarchy, and just for right relationships from a cultural standpoint, more specifically the Hebraic culture standpoint. So everyone has to be accountable, where they can look at their lives and try to measure things out, to see whether or not they may be tormented. They may have had to deal with a lot of cruelty, or they may be cruel, or the cruelty that they've experienced causes them to want to be cruel to their spouse or to their loved one, because that's their expression of what love is. So
Right.
what we want to do is to ensure that everyone is taking a measured level of accountability, because if we don't do that, what that can do is interrupt and cut off the relationship. But everyone has had these moments, and everyone does fail. I don't think that as we're dealing with communication failures, these personal things, that is separate from, well, let's just frame it like this. Everyone has gone through these experiences. So it's almost like, if you've never failed, then if you say you've never failed, you're really lying to yourself, because everyone has. If it was you falling off of a bike for the first time, things that we attempt for the first time, there's a level of failure and error, or errors that are going to occur just from lack of familiarity. And it doesn't mean that even as you begin to walk with the Father, or try to develop yourself, personally develop yourself out of the flaws and the errors that you may have, it doesn't mean that you're an imposter. We don't advocate for this whole imposter syndrome where you're trying to fake it till you make it, versus there's this full, complete being and awareness that, yes, there are some things that that I may not know. There are some areas that I'm going to fail in. However, that does not make me a failure.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I want to anchor it with scripture. I want to go to Proverbs 24 really quickly so that we have some base for the things that we address. Like I said, we follow the Hebraic cultural perspective. Um, so Proverbs 24 and 16, it says that, "For a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again, but the wicked shall fall into mischief." So even being a just man, there's a level of failure that is going to occur within humanity. That's consistent. However, just because you fail, as I said, it doesn't make you a failure. You can develop yourself out of these things. So, did you want to go ahead and highlight some of the things that people may want to consider in terms of developing themselves out of their own personal failure, or just any other direction that you wanted to go?
So just about the point where you mentioned that failure is inevitable
Mm-hmm.
and everyone experiences it, to just demonstrate how unaware people are, how failure is viewed in this negative way instead of a building block for development.
Mm-hmm.
One of the job interview questions that we ask in a behavioral job interview is, tell me about a time that you failed.
Yeah, I've done it before.
And people struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And they often will say, I've never failed, I'm just that good, you know, and it shows a lack of self-awareness, really.
Yeah,
But the other question is then, what would your colleagues say about you?
Yeah.
Right, so just to, illustrate further that people are just unaware of failure and how you can really view it as a point of a launch pad to grow
Mm-hmm.
versus looking at it in this negative, judgmental, I'm a failure kind of thing. It's just one failure, one point that didn't result in what your desired outcome was.
Mm-hmm.
That's really all it is. It's not saying that you're a failure.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that this attempt that you made was a failure. I just wanted to bring that out because you did mention that people just seem to kind of be unaware.
Mm-hmm. And what did you, so on the heels of this failure, on the heels of this personal failure that may have led to a relationship failure, how are you interpreting it?
Right.
How do you look at this experience that you've just come through?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a positive thing? Is it a negative thing? Is it causing you to collapse? Is it a powerful motivating factor?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it a crippling hindrance to you?
Right.
So we don't want the things that we've experienced to become a hindrance. We want to transmute those things into a higher state and then use that. Now, there is this phenomenon of people using the motivation of the fear of failure
Mm-hmm.
to catapult them. But that's a negative energy. It's a negative thing that you're trying to prevent versus being positive and trying to accomplish the goal. You're trying
Right.
you're trying to prevent yourself from missing the goal. So those are two fundamentally different things. Would you say?
Yes, they are. And I think back to that question, the interview question, is really assessing how one views the failure.
Yeah.
What was the situation? What was tell us a little bit about that. How did you assess the situation and the failure, and what was the result? And that's really what we're after, the result.
Mm-hmm.
You want to know, how did you face this failure and how did you overcome it?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, like you're saying, I wake up in the morning, I think about how I'm going to prevent having an accident,
Mm-hmm.
versus I'm going to drive
Safely.
That's
all.
Right, and that inevitably that prevents most accidents from happening.
Yes. Yeah, you don't want to think about worst case scenario.
Right.
You want to think about what you want versus what you don't want.
Right.
What we want is for people to assume responsibilities for their actions, to use the experiences that you have to catapult you to a higher ground. And see, we understand that sin, which is violation of Torah,
Mm-hmm.
sin is a transgression of the law, is missing that mark. You've missed the mark. You failed to hit that mark properly to achieve the goal that the Father has told us that we should hit. And that's common. That's going to occur. But what you need to do, as we read in Proverbs 24, is get up. It doesn't matter if it's 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, all the way up to 7 times. Get back up. Don't stop. Don't settle for the errors that are preventing you from being the best version of yourself, from being closer to the Most High, from being closer to your spouse, from being closer to your children, from adopting the language and the mindset that is attractive enough to gain people. Like, we had a conversation earlier today, even, before we began recording, we began to pray. And yeah, I think about what the Messiah said, that if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. It's not trying to draw people unto us because we're fallible. We fail. However, we're just trying to share some of our failures as well as the successes and the result, as you reference, on this side of things.
Right. So you also mentioned the influence that a family has. Did I make that? I think you did. You referenced it earlier when you were talking about influencing, and I thought about personal development and how family can influence that in children.
Yes.
And that's through setting rules, setting boundaries,
Yes.
and standards, expectations. So it's very clear and linear about what I should do, and therefore I can develop this accountability because I'm measuring myself against something. So in terms of translating that into a relationship, as I have had to assimilate to my husband to be a helpmeet, to be his wife, there are things that I had to let go of about my personal individual self.
Yes.
Now, if I decide to sit and fight to stay where I am and remain where I am in the face of conflict, and not necessarily this really strong, like in your face kind of conflict, but there's an undergirding of conflict.
It's a difference. There's constantly this difference of opinion and expression. So
exactly, yes. So it's not like, oh, it's a lot of bickering or anything like that, but if there's a push and pull and a tug of war all the time over the goal of the family, then somebody's got to change, and it's got to be me.
we don't have arguments. We may just have passionate presentation of dissenting ideas. But see, this is the thing about the relationship component, is that you want to have dissenting ideas because most people, they come with their own baggage, their own experiences, and they're not really true and really in touch with themselves and who they are. So they put on these airs and they try to say the right thing in a moment when they really don't feel that way. So what I've adopted is, when you feel that there's a rub, when you feel like there may be an issue there or a difference in opinion, let's have a conversation, because from that conversation, if I give a little bit and you give a little bit, we can come to this balance. And some of my thoughts will help to change and augment your position. Some of your thoughts that I may not have considered may begin to soften and lessen my position without me becoming compromised. And most people that don't have confidence, that aren't self-assured, they have real problems with yielding.
That's what I was just saying. That's why I was talking about the structure and the boundaries and expectations, because I think that fosters the confidence in a young person, in a child. And that person then grows up to be healthy in a relationship. And it's not to present themselves as this whole, and I'm going to take your word, as you say, actualized person, but just to know who I am and what I am capable of bringing to a situation versus I'm stagnant, this is where I am, I'm gonna stay here no matter what, because this is my safe place.
Yeah, and I'm gonna find somebody that'll accept me in
Right.
this place where I don't have to move. I don't invite challenge.
No.
I don't invite critique. I
Right.
don't invite anything that makes me not feel as if I am the epitome,
Right.
the apotheosis of anything, of masculinity or of femininity.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's an affront to that, I immediately have to separate myself from, because I don't like challenge. And see,
It's a
that's
fixed mindset.
it's a
It's a fixed mindset.
yes,
And
and a fixed mindset is a dead mindset,
Mhm.
because there is no growth.
Right. The growth mindset is open to listen to all points of view. Not saying that I'm going to adopt all of them,
Correct.
but I can process the information, and especially in a relationship setting with my spouse, I can listen to the difference of opinion and we can discuss it and we
Mhm.
can have an open and honest conversation because
Yeah.
I've presented myself as who I really am.
Yes,
And I didn't
yes.
come initially presenting who I thought I should be.
Yes.
And then that charade is kind of hard to keep up.
Mm-hmm.
So it's good to just present yourself whether you're different or not. Be who you are so that the confrontation can come early and that this can be settled from the
And
beginning.
a lot of people don't know how to deal with conflict.
Right.
They don't have good conflict resolution skills. They take it as a personal attack on their person, when I'm dealing with the idea and your interpretation of the reality of this moment, where you may be purely driven by your emotion, your feeling, and your senses, very tactile, versus that's not logically what's going on. But even in me, if I'm trying to be logical, I'm not going to insult you for being, having a feeling nature, even though sometimes that can be, the necessary state, or it can be a state that's not necessary,
Mhm.
that doesn't lead you to the conclusion, but understanding that there's a certain of malleability. Did I say that right?
Mm-hmm.
Malleability, you say I pronounced that wrong.
Like you're missing a syllable.
That is necessary for everyone.
Right.
As we grow and as we develop into what the Father has called us to be. We've said this before. We have all been made in the image of something that is not the Most High.
Right.
The environment, you mentioned that earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Where the natural environment that you came from, those conditions helped to form you. It could have been North Carolina, it could have been Texas, it could have been Nigeria, it could have been Ghana. That environment molded you to think the way that you think, and that image may be contrary to the image that the Father, according to His Word, wants you to adopt.
Right. This is maybe totally contrary or not even aligned with this conversation.
Okay.
However, we went to a water park.
Okay.
This weekend. And what we saw at the water park was appalling.
Mm.
And what we discussed about it after the fact, we always recap.
Yes. You gotta debrief.
You gotta debrief.
Debrief your people, man. Talk to your people about what you
Right.
saw, what they saw, and if they saw anything.
There were hair bonnets in the lazy river. My son said that he saw at least 7 pairs of false eyelashes that he tried to kill because he thought they were bugs in the water.
Not the minks.
The minks have become unlinked, floating along the lazy river.
Yeah.
But my point is that you said, if you're not careful, your mind kind of shifts in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And what we talked about was that this has become the norm outside of, our lifestyle. It has become the norm that it's no longer a strange thing to see all of this skin out and inappropriate dress and just people presenting themselves in the way that they feel that this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, I'm going to do it. It's the do as thou wilt.
Yeah.
And we were very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because
even I push back. I say your ass ain't got to be out to go swim.
it does not.
You don't have to show your ass just for you to get into some water. You're not even swimming. You're wading.
Right.
Most of us can't swim. Well, I can swim like a fish, but
right.
That's just not necessary. You can get in there. It was a couple people that were dressed similar to us that were covered up, because it's just not necessary. You're no more cooler. Not I'm referring to temperature.
Right.
So this was somewhat of a cultural clash that it became a point of conversation. So, we discussed this years and years ago.
Right, but my point was just that if you're not careful, you'll be sucked in.
You'll be sucked into it.
Yes, it's subtle.
Because
it's a subtlety that people don't see an issue with and they identify with it, and then now everybody is doing it, and now you're the...
Yeah, we're the outlier.
Right.
We're the outlier.
And that's
totally
fine.
Yeah,
right.
I accept that. So I said, there is no condition in which I will allow other men or either other women to look at my wife or my daughter in their bra and panties.
No.
That's in essence what a swimsuit is. You can call it a swimsuit, but it's bra and panties.
Right.
Most times. It don't even have to be a thong, none of that. Two-piece. But I said, I would not allow a man to see my wife under those conditions. Why is it that if I want to go to a water park or if I want to go swim, that now, oh yeah, bro, you can see all that, yeah, bro, you see it hang underneath, you can see, no, man, not mine. I'm telling you, not mine. Right. I don't do that. Right. And my wife will tell you that I intentionally don't look at other women that are, because they want attention, so I make sure to not give it to them.
Oh my goodness.
I make sure not
seeking
to.
Attention.
But that's neither here nor there.
So
that's we talking about. We talking about personal failure, family.
Right. That's a personal failure to think that it's okay to be scantily clad.
Well, I don't think so. I don't think it's a personal failure.
What do you think it is?
I think that you're looking at it from a different culture. Mm-hmm. Seeing through the lens of the Hebraic culture, where we require that our wife and our women, even myself, I wasn't out there shirtless, flexing, showing the pecs, and I wasn't doing none of that. Yes. I wasn't doing that. So even I had to be modest in my presentation because I don't want nobody to stumble. This is like the humorous part. This is humorous part.
Hilarious.
So this is like our culture says something different than the American culture. So our mindset, our culture is intentionally Eastern. Why do I say Eastern? Because our home is Jerusalem. We are the children of Yah. And there's a certain presentation that he wants for his people. And I'll be damned if I deny that or I allow those that I serve and those that serve me to defy that. Right. Because it didn't come from me. Right. The standard came from him. And so we want to operate in that. And those that don't, we say don't.
Right. So in terms of personal accountability, though, or personal failure, if I know that this is a standard that my husband has set for his family and his home, and I try to defend, well, I wore a two-piece when you met me. In fact, I had on a string bikini.
Uh-oh.
You didn't see nothing wrong with it then.
Yeah.
So I would be in error to try to remain in that position if my husband is moving the family toward more modest apparel and dress and presentation. So that would be something that I would have to take ownership of and change my mindset about it.
And if you don't, that would be a personal failure.
That would be a failure.
That can cause a failure of a relationship, because there are a lot of men who've had to fight, who've had to defend themselves, and I can't say defend the honor of that woman, because if she got her ass out, I don't know what honor, what honor you're trying to defend. You may be trying to defend your pride because he's trying to holler at her, but she put it out there. She's advertising because she wants attention.
She wants the attention and she wants the squabble.
Hey.
She would like for the conflict between two men to be on behalf of her behind being out.
Yeah. But I don't even know. I'm gonna push back. I don't think that they think that far ahead. They just think that it's a matter of personal expression, and they should be able to wear this without any consequences. Not realizing that when men deal, we have a certain level of respect for one another, and if that line is crossed, it can get physical at the drop of a dime.
Right.
So if the line is crossed as it relates to my woman, now I have to defend her in a way that I should not have had to defend her.
She should not have put you in that position.
Right. She doesn't realize that these are maybe the consequences of personal failure when it comes to wardrobe choices.
Right. But is it chicken or egg? Like what's first? Is it her responsibility to not dress that way?
She shouldn't put him in that position.
Or is it his responsibility to communicate the expectation?
So let's just go back and focus on the culture. We can't. I find it difficult to really articulate any logic with these. It's really illogical the way that they present. It can digress into these preferential things, these argumentative things, and freedom of choice, and I'm my own person, and a man can't tell a woman what to do with her body. Fine.
What was it that I just told you? I saw something where a guy was saying, you can have my baby without marrying me.
Mm-hmm.
You're fine with having my baby without marrying me, but the only way I can tell you how to dress is if I'm your husband.
Yes.
And that's the argument that he was facing, I guess, from his person,
Baby
mama, relationship,
most likely.
Right, but anyway.
No, that's really, really a true thing. That at what point can a man tell a woman how to present in the dating market?
Well, the thing about it is, as far as the personal relationship or the personal responsibility, is that the expectation for a woman is to understand what that is before even trying to assume the role of a wife.
Yeah.
And that has to be taught or modeled or some kind of way. She has to have that understanding that her body is not her body and it's not for this display for everyone to just, have access to.
Yeah.
So unless that's understood, then it's going to be a point of contention or a problem in the relationship. But enough about the
we off that.
kind of digressed.
We did
and got off on another path, and it's my fault. So I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We just want people to look at things properly,
right?
Because they, this thing is not occurring in a vacuum. We are in the world, but we are not of the world.
Right.
We see the way that they're behaving. We see the way that society is devolving, the way that society is moving and is trending, and it is what it is. It's coming to a steep, to a swift decline, and we have to do what we can do to ensure that we're not a part of that failure. That we're not a part of that decline, versus we're part of the incline. We're part of the direction that the Father is going. There's one kingdom that's falling and there's another kingdom emerging. So what kingdom do you want to be a part of?
Right. And that's something that people really have to be conscious of and stop saying things and not really aligning with it.
I want to read the scripture, and we're going to be done, family. This scripture in 1 Corinthians chapter 3 has been in my heart because we're talking about personal failure and the things that we've done, the works of our hands, and the way that they've been judged. So everyone's work is of a certain quality, is of a certain nature. So we don't know the quality or nature of a thing until there's pressure, until there's fire. And the scripture has told us, now I'm talking about those that align with the book. It has told us there's a certain way in which our works, our failures, our commitments, the things that we put out there, the way that it's going to be measured. 1 Corinthians chapter 3. I'm going to go up to verse 12. It says, now if any man build upon this foundation gold, silver, precious stones, wood, hay, stubble. House of Dawid knows something about gold, silver, and precious stones. Hallelujah. Verse 13, every man's work shall be made manifest, for the day shall declare it, because it shall be revealed by fire. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort that it is. So the things that you're doing, it will be made manifest. You cannot hide it, even though you do it in private. Even though you may fail in private, even though you may succeed in private, whatever that is, it will be made manifest. Right. There is nothing that is hid from the eye of the Most High. His eyes are constantly on the righteous. The eye of Yah is in every place, beholding the evil and the good. Mm-hmm. So you want to ensure that the work that you're putting forth, whether it be gold, silver, precious stone, wood, hay, stubble, when it's tried by the fire, that it can withstand. And the fire shall try every man's work of what sort it is. Verse 14, if any man's work abide, which he hath built thereupon, he shall receive a reward. If any man's work shall be burned, he shall suffer loss, but he himself shall be saved, yet so as by fire. So even though the fire has come to purify you, you may have been purified and saw that there was a level of failure, that everything was not able to be sustained, that it was not able to be maintained through the fire, through the pressure, through the heat. However, you still were saved. You yourself as an individual, you may have failed. But you can still evolve past that point of failure and look at those things that you presented. Go back and remember Cain. Cain presented something to the Father and he said, well, if it was good, then, you will be received. Or else sin lies at the door. So you have to ask yourself, in my failures, in the times that I was unsuccessful, did sin lie at the door? Right. What was the mindset? What did I think about the thing that I even presented? Was it half-cocked? Was it half-hearted? Was it disingenuous? Was it angry? Was it hasty? How did you present these things that caused it to be, instead of gold, silver, and precious stone, maybe it was wood, hay, stubble? So in this text, we have a digression of the quality of presentations.
That's good, and it's very interesting that was a text that you chose to read, because I had a note here that said that we have to hold ourselves accountable for our outcomes and results, both good and not so good. Yes. So we tend to want the glory when the outcome is, good, but we don't want to accept the failures, yes, or the outcomes that aren't what we hoped for. So that is a part of the ownership that we have to have. And if the Most High is holding us accountable, then we definitely need to look at ourselves and make adjustments in our behavior so that we are aligned with that. Yes, very good. Are you interpreting it as a failure or as a lesson? A lesson that you can learn from. Exactly, and I think that the lessons come through the failures. Yes. And people look at failure in such a negative way instead of looking at it as, like I said, a launch pad to learn and improve in a certain area. Okay. But that requires a soberness of mind in order to really look at things objectively and not look at everything in this way, like the world is being hypercritical or the significant other is being hypercritical of you. Sometimes criticism is necessary for you to grow. Yes. If you can't receive feedback and criticism, then you won't grow and you will continue to have failure. Yeah, and we want to be mindful
take note of, listen to your wife, listen to your children, see the things that they're saying. And it very well may be a thing that you need, that you may need to adjust, because you may think you're presenting the gold standard and it may be silver. You may think it's silver, but really it's just wood, hay, stubble, freshly mown grass. It really is not that same quality, but hierarchically, you should be able to hear wisdom when it's spoken, even from the mouth of babes. That's what praise is perfected, because they're innocent. And I'm not saying that you allow your children to critique you. That's not what I'm saying. I hope that's not what you got from that statement. It's just ultimately being able to take feedback from those that serve you, whom you actually serve, and also be able to get critique from above when someone that you value, that's in a higher station, and we all should have someone in a higher station that can speak a word to us, that'll cause us to move, that'll cause us to stop, that'll cause us to be reflective, to reevaluate what we're doing right then, right there, with no lag time. And I'm not saying the Most High, if you know His voice, that's the presumption, that you do know His voice, that it can stop you. But the Most High uses men and He uses women. So we try to bring it out of the ether, out of this nebulous place, and firmly connected in family and in biology, in manhood and womanhood, because these are the ones that were made in the image of the Most High and have been His representatives and those that speak for Him.
Right, very good. I want to add that all feedback isn't verbal as well. It's just the attitude in which things are executed, especially when it's someone that serves you. That's how you basically, because we don't solicit feedback from children.
No.
But as a watchful mother, I can interpret activities and behaviors and actions and kind of, figure out what the spirit is that's moving.
Yes.
And then we make adjustments based on that, or, have a conversation or confront that to correct the behaviors if they are present. But I just wanted to add that when you said, feedback, even from my husband, feedback isn't always verbal. Everything that I do is not going to be, oh, you did so great, honey. Oh, that's wonderful. If I need that, then I need to really look at myself on a personal level and ask myself why I need that reassurance constantly in order to operate in the manner that I'm supposed to.
Yeah.
Because it should not require me to be consistently reassured, reaffirmed. The fact that I'm holding this position and have been holding it for the past 20 years should be reassurance enough. And the fact that our family is holding intact should be reassurance enough. Of course, it's good to hear that, you're doing a good job or whatever, but if that's not your husband, if he doesn't talk like that, you have to seek, another way to...
What language is he using to
another way to
communicate,
validate.
to convey that?
Right.
What language is he using?
Ask him.
That's how our fathers used to not communicate back in the day. And it's like, Dad, you never say you love me. What you mean? Say I love you. You living in my house, ain't you?
I feed you, don't
I feed you, don't. You got clothes on your back. You got shoes on your feet. All right, well, there you go. That's all the I love yous you gonna get.
Right. Right.
That should be sufficient. So, all right. Did you have anything else, baby? We're gonna wrap it up.
No, that was it. That's all that I had. That was part
Closing
2.
remarks.
Again, that was just facing failure on a personal level.
Yes.
And really some personal development kind of things, which include the personal accountability first and foremost. And that was part 2. So relationship failure was the last. This is about personal failure, and then the next one is going to cover spiritual.
Yeah, spiritual failure, which is so key, because we want to just make sure that what we've done in our personal life, we're able to influence those, in our relationship dealings. And that should reflect our relationship with the Most High. So if you have false concepts and some failings in your personal life that has caused you to have failure in your relationship life, it's really difficult to have success in a spiritual relationship with a deity that you have not seen nor can you touch. So um, that can become very, very subjective. So we're going to firmly plant our faith in the faith of our fathers, because who is he? He's the God of Abraham. He's the God of Isaac. He's the God of Jacob. There are certain natures and presentations and boxes that he checked for us in order for us to validate that we were in the faith. So those are some things that we're going to broach on the next episode of the Go Lightly Perspective, and I pray it is my sincerest desire that this has been beneficial to you. Take a second, please, like the video. If it's been something that rubbed you the wrong way, hey, leave a comment, share it, and we can dialogue, go back and forth. Well, maybe not back and forth, but at least have an exchange of ideas, because we're not afraid of ideas. So may the Most High bless you richly and continue to reward you openly for what you're doing in private. All right, y'all. Shalom, shalom.
Shalom, everyone.